another edition of the Badass Entrepreneurs Club. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Rooney, and the whole point of this podcast is to really bring out those entrepreneurial stories to showcase the grit that it takes while leaving you inspired to still continue on your entrepreneurial journey. And we have an outstanding guest today, Anne Genge, who is a dear friend of mine who I am so excited to showcase her on this because she is one of those people that I really admire, and I'm sure by the end of this, you will as well. Welcome, Anne.
Well, that's a really great introduction. Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm really excited to share anything that I can that's going to help others too, and be a part of what's going to be an ongoing great conversation.
Wonderful. Well, I'd like you to start by just sharing with the audience, how did your entrepreneurial journey start?
Wow. Well, it starts somewhere around when I first graduated from university, and my first job was actually selling graves. And that is sort of
like rest in peace kind of graves?
Yeah. Okay. Graves where people are buried. And I guess, in doing that, you build resilience pretty quickly because they start you off on the phone where you have to phone people and say, have you ever thought of prearranging your cemetery requirements? And, of course, that's probably the worst thing you could sort of telemarket. I finished university. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was this job presented itself. I thought it was going to be a job helping people. In the end, really, it was very salesy. Really didn't fit with my values, and I knew I needed to do something different. I had a friend that was working in a dental office as a office manager. She said, just come and spend a day here, see what this is all about, which I did. And then I thought, great, I'm going to be a hygienist. So I went back to school and started that journey. I worked in a clinic for about 6 months and realized really I wanted to be the dentist, but that wasn't probably going to happen at that point. But I got very interested in the job that was the people that would be reps selling the stuff and the equipment and everything. So I applied for a job in that, ended up working as a rep and worked my way up to being the national sales director of a company, and which was great. But I had this inkling inside me that I needed to do something bigger and be more challenged. I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. Everyone in my family, with the exception of my sister, if you go back even 3 generations, they're all self-starters. They all have their own businesses, and so I just made a little leap, a big leap, I guess, into basically some version of what I'm doing now.
Okay. So with the entrepreneurs that were in your family, were they successful entrepreneurs, or were they kind of the entrepreneurs that just owned their own job and made a living that way?
No, really successful actually, and very scrappy. It's interesting. My parents are, my father has passed, but my dad had a grade 8 education, but he knew how to work hard, and he knew how to leverage opportunities. So he always had some kind of thing going on. Okay. So he was selling insurance, and he started his own fruit and vegetable stand, and then he was buying and selling houses, and then he got into owning a grocery store, and then buying commercial real estate and residential real estate, and just always constantly had a side gig. Always had a hustle. Mm-hmm. My mother, very well educated, right side of the tracks. Somehow they ended up together because it didn't really make sense how they should have evolved, and actually worked together in their businesses for a number of years. And I think it's really important part of my story because we were raised watching some of these businesses fail and thrive constantly, which is always our journey, right? In the beginning, I think people think, I'm going to start my own business. And I had this conversation with somebody this morning. You're 3 years. Can you give away everything? Like all your stability, all your sleep, all your spare time, all your parenting roles and your money and max out your credit cards. If you can do all that for 3 years, you'll probably be okay. But anyway, I had a lot of lessons I learned through watching them through those journeys. Probably the best of which is what you talk about with the grit and the resilience and the, you know, it builds you in a certain way. It gives you a toolkit in a certain way. You know, my uncles, my grandmother, you know, war era woman, right? Forced into the work field. Grandfather came back from the war, kaput, and she had to take care of the family. She worked for TTC as a driver and then had a little Airbnb kind of business, or as it was back in the, I guess in the 30s and 40s. But yeah, so there's a long line of it. And I guess you get wired a certain way and you just can't be very corporate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ruined for corporate now, right? So
Totally. So with the dental company, was there just kind of a point where you're like, you know, I want to be my own boss. I want to go out there. I want to be a risk taker. I want to give away 3 years of my life without even knowing I'm going to give away 3 years of my life. Or what was the inciting incident that made you go, yeah, it's time to switch roles here?
Well, you know, for me, I got as close as I could to the top. I was part of a public company that became a private company. And then, you know, I got as close as I could to the top without actually owning that business. I have different visions than others. I feel that you can build a sustainable, wildly successful company on very different values than what many others do. And when I say that is, for me, money is not the driver. I have an innate competitiveness that I want to be the most knowledgeable as I can. You know, I want to be the best. I want to be the smartest. I want to be the most helpful person. And I believe that those things are what create your, when you gain business that way, you don't lose it. And you know, it's easy to be sort of lazy and say people before profits, but for me, it's deeper than that. I needed to build something that was rooted in some very important, strong values that are really focused around doing the right thing for everybody in the food chain, not just the corporation, not just the clients, but for the team that we're going to build to support it all too.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to get out of that, right? I'm a bit of a reluctant entrepreneur. I'm a little bit risk adverse. In fact, you know, now my job is risk management, right? So I'm very good at kind of going, well, there's this and there's this. And my brother already had started his own IT business. He did a lot of IT design, integration. He worked in the finance industry and healthcare. I kind of rode in and then took his one-man show consulting business together with him and built a brand around it and built I'd say a more timely focused business. So instead of just doing mainstream sort of piecework IT, we focused heavily in developing tools that would allow for cybersecurity to happen no matter how small the business, and we were hyper focused in healthcare, so mostly dental and medical practices. And then the, you know, the growth and the challenge is there forevermore, because that's just the bad guys are always chasing us, right? So I found my place where I can be forever entertained and challenged and growing.
Mm-hmm. And cybersecurity is like putting a target on your back for people to chase after you and try and break what you're trying to build. So I imagine you experience a lot of that on a regular basis. That would not be a business that I would be interested to be in, just because I know the bad guys are out there trying to break what you've built. So good on you for doing that. But when you started working in that industry, what was it actually like? Because you went from a healthcare, like helping people, giving them anesthetic to use on their patients, to something completely different. Like, it feels like it's almost in left field. Yes, there was that connection with your brother having started it and you went in that way, but did you feel like a fish out of water at the beginning?
Not really, because I've always been quite a tech nerd. You know, our house growing up was always sort of I wasn't sort of your typical girl. I didn't have dolls. I was kind of like the one who wanted to take everything apart and see how it worked, right? So for me, it was just it was already an area of interest. But I think the core of it is still the same. It's seeing a big, giant black hole of need. And I mean, it really is a black hole of need, because there are so many, healthcare is such a target, right? For cyber crime. Bad guys are always after that. And many small healthcare practices don't have access to the talent, and so the first thing I wanted to do was become certified in privacy and cybersecurity. My brother had lots of certifications in that regard, and we hire people around us that are best in class, that are hyper educated, right? Because that's exactly what you have to do to be on top of all this stuff. But it's finding a big hole and filling it, and just doing a good job and doing the right thing for people on an ongoing basis. And that would be the secret sauce to any successful business, is finding a gap, finding something that nobody else is fixing, right? Here's a problem, fix the problem, be reliable, say what you're going to do what you say, and keep doing that thing, and become best at it. Those are how businesses are built. The Me Too's, they'll always have to survive on undercutting price. But when you find an area that you can exploit and be king or queen of, that's really what you want to do, right? So this is my chosen spot. But
do you think that entrepreneurs have to really be passionate about what they're doing, or can find something where there is a hole in the marketplace that needs to be filled and be able to still continue to push them through? Because there's so much that gets in your way, right? Entrepreneurship is not a simple path. Getting a 9-to-5 job, pretty simple path. But when you step into the entrepreneurial arena and your industry shifts, like we saw tons of industries shift during the pandemic, and then suddenly people saw holes in the marketplace, and so they started businesses based on that, or they pivoted their own business to fill a need. Do you think that passion piece has to be there in order to stick to it for couple of decades to build this legacy of a company? Or can you build it based on just filling that need and being okay with like taking a paycheck home from doing
that? If it is possible to build it without passion, I'm not interested. I don't think it is. It'll be, look, I think there's lots of transactional businesses. There's businesses that are kind of just there for a moment. And maybe there are some people that can make some quick bucks and get out. But, I think that's the exception, not the rule. You and I have talked about the peaks and valleys thing, and you see these memes like the trajectory I thought I was going to take, and then really it's like, and everything is, and everything worth doing is, right? If you're not cutting new paths, then again, I think, look, there are some businesses where you can just go, oh, you know what, I'll do what he's doing, but I'll do it for 20% less. Sure, some of those do all right. But I think that if you look at a lot of the most successful, most profitable, most sustainable businesses, at the core, you're always going to find some, and you called us weirdos last week. It's true. We are weirdos, right? Because most people couldn't sustain the stress that we put ourselves under, and it will never go away. The stress won't go away because we'll never be satisfied with whatever's happening now, because we're builders, we're innovators, right? So it's always going to be incrementally nudging and pushing that and pushing that. And what's great about when you push, you have, your bucket of evidence of what you can do gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then those peaks and valleys get easier to weather because you expect them, and you can reach back in your toolkit and go, oh yeah, guess what? I've been here before. Meh, we got this. And you go, right? But you need to have those bottom outs, like that sort of breakdown before breakthrough, a number of times. And a lot of people can't stomach it, right? So if you've got that passion too, It's good as long as you're not irrational about what you're trying to achieve. Like if you're thinking, oh hey, nobody's made a space car that can go to Pluto, I'm a doing that, right? We might say that's not a very investable business either. So, but no, you do it every day. We chat about this, and especially I'm only running one company, and you're doing this like 2-3 things at a time too. Yeah, so if you don't have that passion, if you don't have, because it's just so much energy, it just takes so much out of you all the time. So
absolutely. Can we talk about the investable part of it? Because, a lot of people, when they start a business, they're only thinking in the now, like this is what I need to do to get through today. And they're not thinking, okay, down the line, maybe I want to sell it. Maybe I want to go public. Maybe I want X, Y, Z. You've been part of incubators and some really cool projects that have allowed you to kind of open your mind to, what does the end product look like for the business? Like, and when it's time to adios and exit the business, what does that look like? So with what you've been through with those situations, how often do you see people really staying in the now instead of actually looking at the future and going, okay, this is the end point that I want to aim for?
Yeah. I think you always need to be thinking, generally what I do, I figure out, what are we doing this week and where do we want to be in 3 years? The middle generally fills itself in. With regards to investment, I think it seems to be the holy grail, and it's quite celebrated. If you're in the startup community, a lot of social media, a lot of the attention that you get, press releases and everything is all about, company ABC raised $1 million of this type of funding, that type of funding. Where I think it's crucial, and one of the best things that I did, anybody who gets a chance to do Randy Thompson's startup boot camp with regards to investment, and he's out of Alberta. I think he was one of the original dragons from Dragon's Den, but he talks about the different types of funding that you can seek. Debt versus giving away equity versus different types of agreements in between. What I think is extremely important when you're looking at your end game is understanding where you want to get to in your own sort of emotion and professional self, when you might want to get out, but really understanding money, because when you go through a course like that, what you start to understand is each time you slice up the pie, what's that going to look like when you do want to get out? And everybody says, oh, such and such company, they sold for 100 million. And by the way, nobody ever gets there. Like one guy every 5 years, right? Or woman, sorry. But you have things called exit waterfalls. So understanding what that financial impact is going to be in the end, and I think was one of the best things that I could do, and one of the best pieces of advice I could give to somebody else, is you do need to be thinking about that, and maybe making very different decisions in the beginning, because sometimes you could sell your company for $5 million and end up with the exact same amount of money in your pocket as if you sold it for $100 million or $50 million at some point. So really important stuff. And that's, I think, some of the mistakes that people make of being sort of short-sighted about it.
Yeah. And I think it's tempting when there's money being dangled in front of you, you're like, oh yeah, take it. Right. And we're not necessarily thinking about the consequences of what that will look like when it comes to the end of the road. So when companies like how old is your company now? And your company's name is Alexio, just so that everybody knows. We didn't mention that yet.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So Alexio is August 2017 was when we became Alexio. We had been working with the technology leading up to becoming this company for a number of years prior to that. So around 2014, we started to develop these tools. But in who we are now, we started in what's called Venture Lab inside IBM headquarters in Markham, Ontario, which is, most people are familiar with what IBM is, and grew the business up there. And now, you know, we're nationally known and have a few pretty nice awards under our belts. But it's like you say, I think you just touched on a couple of really good points about passion and grit. You know, we're going into year 4, and we're, you know, we're in total scale up mode, acquiring other businesses and so on. But those earlier years, they're tough, especially when you're in the tech business and you make so much heavy investment. You know, it's not something you start on your credit card, right? You need to have you need to dig deep to fund those types of development dollars, right?
Mm-hmm. So with where you're going now, so do you have an exit plan that you're looking at, or is it, you know, we just want to grow this as big as we possibly can and see where if there is a limit out there?
Well, you know, most entrepreneurs will spend a lot of time just assessing what deals or what situations are best for them. I've gone through a few different scenarios. People that we thought, you know, may invest in one way. Well, we went through last year being evaluated for an acquisition, and now we've just decided that we're strong enough. We're going to acquire others, mm-hmm. And you know, it's a tough thing. In fact, I would say one of the other piece of advice would be sometimes the things that you say no to are even more important than the things you say yes to. Mm-hmm. I've wasted a ton of time being involved in due diligence and trying to figure out, you know, if this thing fit or that thing fit. You can waste a lot of time and traction in your business just while you're sitting there trying to evaluate an opportunity that may one day create growth. Sorry, I didn't quite answer your question. My strategy is I can't imagine retiring. And I love what I do. I think, you know, my favorite thing is teaching, helping everyone understand that cybersecurity really is for everyone, because everyone has some sort of technology that they're working with. Mm-hmm. The more I'm able to do of that, the happier I am. And, you know, unless some terrible thing happens and I can't speak anymore, then, you know, I'll be out. But I just love what I do, and it's so dynamic and it's so necessary, and I can make big impacts on people understanding the risks that they have and keeping not just themselves and their businesses safe, but their families too. So mm-hmm. That's what makes me happiest, and that's sustainable, I think.
For sure. And there's other cybersecurity companies out there, even in the dental industry, which is where my background comes from. There's other companies doing similar things. Do you feel like there's lots of competition for what you're doing, or are you so niched and specialized that, you know, you are the company and you're just running your race looking forward because you don't have that many people breathing down your neck?
I think for me, what's lucky, I guess we are very specialized. There are a ton of companies that offer cybersecurity. They use some of the tools. I think, you know, we're very lucky. We have a moat. Our business is fairly insulated because of the way that we've built our technology. We're able to leverage things like automation and machine learning. We've got an extra 50 safeguards for cybersecurity that no one else has right now. Somebody will catch up for sure. But I think our real value is in that not only do we have these tools that we use, but there's just, you know, we're fairly untouchable when it comes to experience and being certified. So it's sort of like, I guess, you know, we always come back to the dentist, right? Like a general dentist can do root canals and can do ortho, but then, you know, why do specialists exist, right? And there's still going to be a number of scenarios where you're going to send someone to the endo or the perio or and so that's really where we exist. So there aren't a lot of people with this skill set. And even if you look it up, the world in general has an extreme shortage of cybersecurity professionals. And so if you think about that already, even big corporations and governments can't get enough people with these skill sets to fill these jobs. What the heck is left for little healthcare practices? Like nothing, right? So yeah, I feel pretty, I can be very confident there. But my hope really would be that many more do come, because that's the only way that we get everybody protected. Because ultimately, you and me and everyone on here, you and I, to be grammatically correct, and everyone watching this, that we all have a security problem, because there aren't enough people like me that are helping businesses. So our data is all at risk. So the best thing that can happen is that many more people come into this, because there's way more to be done than can be done by the number of people we have with this expertise. So
awesome. Now, there's going to be lots of entrepreneurs listening to this, and some of them will be aspiring entrepreneurs, some will be seasoned entrepreneurs. But for those aspiring entrepreneurs, or maybe the newer ones into this lovely life choice that we've made, what are you doing, or what would be your advice to help them to come into it more confidently and have fewer of the stumbling blocks that many of us entrepreneurs experience, that helps us to want to exit entrepreneurship instead of have that grit, develop that grit to actually move forward past the roadblocks and be able to realize the dream that we started with when we decided to enter the arena?
Well, I usually tell people they shouldn't do it. I usually tell them about 3 times, right? Not everybody's bred for it, right? It's not, and it actually has very little to do with the amount of school you have or the degree you have, or it's something else. It's believing the impossible can happen even when there's no evidence. It's about understanding that many times the fear won't go away. And so you have to do things while you're afraid, right? It's about being able to push yourself completely out of any kind of security to enable your dream. And many people can't stomach it. But let's say you do. I would say the biggest mistake I made was actually listening to any so-called mentors, investors, accelerators. I wish that I had talked to more people like myself.
Like the ones who had been there and done it.
Yeah.
We're still in it, or what do you mean?
Yeah, that are still in it. I had a really smart guy in the very beginning, close to the beginning. And the startup community is so focused on raising money, right? And I'm really grateful that this guy, who was a software guy, he said to me, "Well, I'm looking at your numbers. You've done very well. You've got quite a bit of traction." He said, "So, don't spend the next 9 months chasing the old white-haired guy's money." He said, "Just work in your what would happen to your business if you just worked the next 9 months in your business?" And I loved that advice. I didn't realize how powerful it was until about a year later. I realized that, yeah, if I had spent all my time going around pitching my business, I wouldn't have been getting more business. And yet what you need to do is you need to have lots of business, and you need to start pitching if you think you've got something big. But it takes a lot of time. It's very distracting. And so, and then these, I was in one accelerator that really my sales went down by 20% that year. So I would say, believe in yourself, talk to everyone else that's doing this, not necessarily those who say they want to invest or they're going to mentor you and accelerate you, and trust your own gut. You're there already for a reason. You probably have a lot more in you that you don't realize, and try not to let others tell you don't and think they have to fill a gap. People that don't have skin in your game, in my experience, it's sort of paper is patient, conversation is patient. Most of us want to, okay, what's the next thing? Okay, let's do it. And then boom, what's the next thing? Do it, right? As soon as you can, get somebody super organized, like an operations person, if you can, and then just go with your gut. Go with your gut, I think. Yeah, I think the distractions and we get hungry, right? So we make improper decisions when we're hungry. Like if you haven't had $100,000 maxed out on your credit card and wondering where even the minimum payment's going to come from, you're not hardcore. like, like you gotta get there, and then right. So yeah, that's I guess where I would be coming from. And with that, welcome people to have conversations with me, so that hopefully I can help them not end up in those places, right, where they're getting slowed down. It's not even about not getting money or getting money. It's also about losing momentum and your focus, because everybody else thinks they know what you should do with your business, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's tempting when you are an innovative thinker to chase after something. You're like, oh, I could just switch over here and then that'll work out. And, you know, we had a conversation at one point where it's just like, get back to the basics of the business and just think about, okay, what is really, really working, and then level that up instead of adding on things that are kind of working, kind of not, maybe stuff that's not working at all, but you really like the idea. And so you keep chasing that one. But I think really that fundamental, and always having someone remind you of the fundamentals that you need to be chasing, is really important.
That's so true. And there's such a difference between a pivot and a squirrel. Right?
Yeah.
We can chase squirrels too. We're pretty good at that. And we, you know, I think that weirdo-ness is that we can do everything, right? So, but just because we can do everything doesn't mean we should. And what you just said, that's probably like, that is such a solid piece of advice, is stopping once in a while and taking a look. What makes, because sometimes what happens too is the things that make us money aren't as exciting, but we need them.
Yes.
They're our core, and they are what are the obviously of most value to our clients. But we want to do, you know, super great things. Back in the day, I remember my brother, you know, his business, he did a lot of digital architecture. He built networks, but then he got the idea that everybody should have a kind of film on the window and have reverse projection, so that their front windows at night would be like a movie of their healthcare practice, you know, their physio practice, their dental practice. But at the end of the day, it was a solution that cost the customer $2,000, and it cost him almost $2,000 to implement it. It was super fun,
yeah,
but it wasn't profitable. Right? Sometimes cookie cutter stuff is profitable, but it's not as exciting. Because why? Because we're innovators and we get bored and we want to just do the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, before we head out, is there anything else you want to add?
No, thank you. I look forward to all the other great people. I know you've got amazing people lined up, and I just think that this is going to bring big value to what I consider to be quite a gap. There are plenty of masterminds, but nobody really talks about you know, the parts in the journey where we can prevent other people from running into the same kinds of glitches and roadblocks. And this is going to be a great conversation. Thanks for inviting me to the club.
My pleasure. So if someone wants to reach out and get a hold of you, either about Alexio or just to have a conversation with you about entrepreneurship, how can they best get a hold of you, Anne?
Sure. So just shoot me an email, ann@getalexio.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. We're on other socials under at Alexio Corporation, if you want to follow at all. But yeah, please. I love, I'm at a point now in my career where I feel like it's time to give back in the ways that others have done for me along the way. And And it's so great to create community, and it's so important to create community. So I hope I get connected to many other people.
Absolutely. And Anne and I are going to be hosting a regular Clubhouse session called the Badass Entrepreneurs Club, so that we can have two-way conversations on this, not just the podcast side of it. So we welcome you to find us on there as well. I'm at Dr. Mulrooney. And Anne, have you set yours up yet?
I have not. I'm going to.
It's tisk, my friend. Well, we have our first one this Friday, so you better get on that so that you can actually be on it with me and I'm not sitting there by myself in a room. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope you continue to tune in. If you have other entrepreneurs that you would like to have featured on the show, I would welcome the introduction to them so that we can keep the conversation going, keep talking authentically about the entrepreneurial journey. Until next time, I wish you a beautiful day and we'll see you all very soon.